All right, we have a quorum now, so we'll begin our Landmark Preservation Commission meeting. I'm calling this meeting to order at 1:02. This is our October 21st, 2025 meeting. First, we will begin with an introduction of commissioners. My name is Erica Warzel. I'm an architectural historian and I was nominated by the community at large. Larry.
I'm Larry Sykes. I'm an architect and I was nominated by History Colorado.
I'm Bree Saman and I'm an interior designer and I was nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
Chris McGinnis, I'm a forensic architect and nominated by the mayor's office.
Emily Hazen, preservationist designer, nominated by city planning.
And I'm Brittany Bryant, Denver Landmark Preservation staff.
All right, thank you. Do we have any general comments from commission or staff today?
I did want to announce that we did launch Landmarks Incorporation into e-permitting. So what that means is all applications to Landmark should now be through e-permitting, which is through Acela. So we are no longer accepting applications through the Landmark inbox and are through e-permits, which is really exciting for the Landmark team, and it's going fairly well so far. So we're very excited about that, and it seems to be working out pretty good. So that's really exciting and several year process for us.
Great, thank you, Brittany.
I also just add the Indigenous Peoples report is available.
Have anything to add on that?
Indigenous persons is available for review.
Yeah, so the American Indian and Indigenous Peoples Historic Context is available for community review right now. It's available on our website, or if you go to denvergov.org/DenverInContext, you can review that and leave comments. We're hoping to wrap up comments by the end of October and then incorporate those and have a final completed context by the end of the year.
Thank you. All right, then we have one meeting record to make sure we don't have any corrections or clarifications for. This is for the October 7th meeting. Any clarifications or comments, commissioners? All right, since there are none, I think we can say those minutes are approved. Next, we'll move on to audio tips for those of you joining us virtually. So for better sound quality, we strongly encourage you to download Zoom on your device. And from there, you can click audio settings to bring up an additional menu, such as adding background noise suppression, testing your speaker and microphone, and adjusting their maximum output volumes. For presenters or public commenters, when it's your turn to speak, please unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon at the bottom of your screen. And then you can expand the menu next to the microphone to reveal additional options, such as selecting speaker and microphone devices and testing them for their volume output. And if you still have audio challenges, we ask that you switch to phone for audio. All right, next we will move to the public comments section. This is, at each meeting, we provide an opportunity for public comment about historic preservation in general and items on our consent review agenda, design review agenda, business items, and discussion items. And we have no public hearing agenda items today. For further comments on these topics, further comments on agenda items will not be taken at a later point in the meeting. So we ask that you please raise your hand through the Zoom function if you would like to make a comment on any of those projects, or if you're attending in person, you can let us know by raising your hand. If you're joining by phone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Each commenter will have up to 2 minutes, and when you begin your comment, we ask that you state your name and, if applicable, the agenda item you're commenting on. So do we have anyone joining us online who would like to make a comment at this time? Yes, right. Anyone here in person who would like to make a comment? Okay, all right. Then we'll move on to our consent agenda. These are items that are reviewed together with one motion because they're considered routine projects that Landmark staff has determined meet the design guidelines for Denver landmark structures and districts and are recommended for approval without discussion. So I will announce the agenda items, and then if commission members need to announce any ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest, please do so after that. We have item 2025-TAXC-030 at 636 North Gaylord Street in the East 7th Avenue Historic District. And 2025-TAXC-023 at 3656 North Bryant Street in the Potter Highlands Historic District. If there are no announcements that commission members need to make, I will ask if there's any of these items that we would like to remove from consent agenda and discuss separately. All right, then I will ask for a motion for approval.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have a second? Second. Thank you, Bree. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? All right, the motion here passes, and if your project is on this consent agenda, it has been approved. You're welcome to leave the meeting, or you can stay on and watch the rest of it. Right, we now can move to design review. We have one design review item. These are items that require individual consideration by the commission and are reviewed and discussed separately before a motion and vote is taken. So we have application number 2025-COA-602 at 2949 West 33rd Avenue in the Potter Highlands Historic District. First, we'll hear from Crystal, staff, and she'll summarize the recommendation.
Great, thanks, Erica. So here you can see 3302 North Federal. It's located in the Potter Highlands Historic District on a corner lot at the intersection of West 33rd Avenue and North Federal Boulevard. The primary structure you can see here on the left was built in 1903 and is a contributing structure to the district. The new ADU that is proposed for this project has been assigned the address of 2949 West 33rd Avenue. Next slide. So here are just some photos of the existing historic structure on the left and center. And far right is the existing garage that'll be demolished, where the new two-story garage ADU will be constructed. Next slide. So here you can see the proposed new site plan. The new garage ADU will be located at the rear of the zone lot and the alley, but will utilize the existing driveway onto West 33rd Avenue. Here you can see the new garage ADU is located in a typical garage location, meeting design guideline 4.18 and utilizing the existing curb cut. Next slide. Here are the floor plans for the new ADU garage. On the left, you can see the first floor plan showing that main entrance to the ADU from the street on West 33rd, and then the garage. Behind the garage, the applicants have also incorporated a home gym and bathroom. And on the right side, you can see the second floor plan showing the 2-bedroom, 1-bath ADU with a small balcony. Next slide. You can see the south elevation facing on the West 33rd Avenue with the main ADU entrance on the left. The structure will be clad in a blonde modular brick at the first floor with a 5-inch shake shingle siding at the second floor and a metal C-channel between the first and second floor for banding. The materials match was found on the primary structure, and materials like this are commonly seen in the district, meeting design guideline 4.20. And then windows at this elevation are just simple 1/1 double hung windows with proportions that match the district. Next slide. So here you can see the west elevation facing towards the rear of the primary structure. As you can see, the grade does change from the street. At the first floor, you can see these two doors. One entrance is to the garage and the other is to the home gym. At the second floor, you can see more atypical clerestory windows mimicking the asymmetrical roof line, which is more visible in this facade. Next slide. Here's the north side interior elevation. This entire elevation will be clad in that 5-inch shake shingle with that metal C-channel trim showing the separation between the first and second floor. At the first floor are casement windows for the gym. At the second floor, simple 1/1 double hungs again that match windows at the alley and west 33rd elevations. Next slide. And then here's the east elevation that's facing towards the alley. Here again is that blonde brick at the first floor and the shake shingle cladding at the second floor and double hung windows, as well as a small balcony with a horizontal metal rail. Here again, you can see that asymmetrical roof line as well. The garage ADU is compatible and subordinate with the primary structure in terms of height, mass, and form, though the roof shape is not found on other accessory structures in the surrounding context, but mostly meets design guideline 4.19. Next slide. And then here's the proposed roof plan for the new structure on the left. The applicants have proposed an asymmetrical roof form that's not commonly found in the district and does not relate to the surrounding historic context or to the primary structure on the lot. On the right here, you can see some of the newer ADU design precedents they've included in their application. However, as you can see, none of these have an asymmetrical roof form. Next slide. So during rounds of review for this project, Landmark staff have repeatedly encouraged a roof form that better matches other roof forms found in the district or on the primary structure. The applicant wanted this asymmetrical roof form and made other changes to the design to try to meet the design guidelines as much as possible. The roof form initially was lower on the side interior lot line, as you can see in the top images of the proposed roof due to trying to meet the bulk plane requirements of the zoning code. Landmark staff informed the applicant that if the roof design was changed to a roof style typically found in the district and that better fit the character of the district, Landmark staff would be supportive of a historic property administrative adjustment to the zoning code to pierce the bulk plane in that case. However, instead of changing to a roof form that better fit the district, they decided to adjust the roof line of the existing asymmetrical roof to be at equal elevations, as you can see here in the photos at the bottom, and ask for an administrative adjustment for that roof line change to pierce the bulk plane. The Denver zoning code states that the commission must find that development conforming to the requirements of the code would have an adverse impact upon the historic character of the district or the historic structure. Landmark staff is not supportive of the requested administrative adjustment for the bulk plane encroachment for the roof, as the overall design of the roof has remained asymmetrical and does not match roof styles typically found in the historic district. This garage ADU roof design does not match typical garage ADU structures that are found in the district, so meeting the requirements of the code would not have an adverse impact on the historic district in this case. That said, Landmark staff acknowledges that this is a detached accessory structure that largely meets the design guidelines otherwise, except for the roof form. So staff felt the design would not necessarily detract from the existing historic structure on the lot or from the district if approved as proposed. However, if the Landmark Preservation Commission approves this design as is without the administrative adjustment, the applicant will need to take additional action before permitting, which may include zoning relief options through the zoning code and could potentially include going to Board of Adjustment, or if that's unsuccessful, may just need to change the roof design to better match the historic district character and meet the requirements of the zoning code. Next slide. And then finally, here's some isometrics, just showing two different views of this ADU from the street and the alley. The mass and overall form fits the surrounding context and is subordinate to the primary structure and compatible with the site and surrounding context. However, the roof form is not typical of the district and does not match the primary structure on the lot. Next slide. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of the ADU in the suggested motion at the top here, but without the historic property administrative adjustment from the commission.
Thank you, Crystal. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff? I did have one question as far as in considering how this ADU fits into the surrounding context. It sounds like you're looking mostly at the primary structure, which I know is what we typically do, but because of this placement on the street and we have neighboring actual primary houses right next door, do you have a sense of how that this ADU fits within like the height and the setback,
It looks like height and setback wise, mass and overall form does appear to fit. It was really just the roof form, which I think if this was a primary structure, we might not be comfortable still recommending approval. But because it is a detached accessory structure that is of its time, we thought maybe the roof form would be okay because all the other guidelines have been met. But we wouldn't necessarily support an administrative adjustment for it. But it does seem to fit overall.
All right, thank you, Crystal. We are now ready to hear from the applicant. Applicant presentations have up to 10 minutes. And when you begin, if you could please give us your name and address, and if you're here in a professional capacity, you can give your work address.
Everyone, thank you for spending time with us today. And thank you, Crystal, for that great summary of everything we've been working through for a while. My name is Matthew Crick. I'm the architect for the project. I'm located at 759 Elati Street. And my two clients, Megan and Philip, they might be online as well. And if they are, I'll let them introduce themselves too. Family stuff on the East Coast right now. So yeah, I think, you know, Crystal gave a great summary of where we're at, where we were, and how we got here. I think really the only sticking point that we've had on this one is the roof line. I feel like we've made a lot of changes to, you know, get the windows in the right places, or the siding to kind of the brick to match the existing house, or the siding match the existing house. So just wanted to spend some of my time to talk about the roof line a little bit, if I could. So at first we had a sawtooth roof, which is two different roof slopes. They're both shed roofs, and that fit the ball plane fairly well. And it provided a lot of light to come in on that section here, so the clear story light could come in. Because one thing that my client was always very conservative about was glass and windows looking into their backyard. They wanted a lot of privacy, and they didn't want these renters to see them and their kids in their backyard. So when we presented to Landmark the first time, we kind of got a hard no that the sawtooth roof wasn't going to work. And so we went back to the drawing board, and we eventually, yeah, I don't know if you could zoom out a little bit on that one. So we went back to this, and we had to make that slope because of the ball plane, and it made for a kind of undesirable interior condition that was maybe like 5 feet or so high. That's where the bedrooms are. So it wasn't ideal, but it did work. And so we went with that first, and then I think Crystal came up with the idea that we could actually make these the same height, which the client loved. And so we brought the roofies up to the same height, and that really made those bedrooms a lot better on that north side. But the part that we diverged a little bit on opinions was if we took this, it made it centered. And you know, it seemed like a fairly easy thing to do. We can do it if we need to, but the interior walls are right here and then right here. This is where the garage is, and we need that at least 20 feet to fit a parking car there. And then this is where the bedroom walls are. So everything stacks, and the center of the roof stacks on top of that. If we move it over, like I said, we can do it, but it'll either have a beam here, and then it'll maybe have a beam in the garage space here, which then will then interject with the stairs on the other side. I don't know if we could see a floor plan, if that's possible. But it would add some cost, and it would kind of mess up the floor plan in the garage and with the stairs. So we were wanting to present to you all today to say yeah, here we go. So it would add the beam, it'd be almost through the steps right here, because this is about the center. And so that beam in the garage wouldn't be ideal. We'd have to reconfigure the steps somehow to start earlier, and maybe you do a bump out here. I haven't completely figured that part out, but that's what we wanted to put to the commission today to say, is this good enough to go through with the asymmetrical roof versus the purely symmetrical roof? And if it is, then we'll great, we'll proceed. If not, we'll make the changes and do whatever you guys say to do. And I wanted to also, there's one other thing, so we went to the RNO, which is the Powder Highlands group, and just want to quote some from their letter. They said, we believe the design of this ADU follows the intent of the LPC design guidelines for the accessory dwelling unit. The asymmetrical roof design complies with bulk plane limits. It maintains a low profile as viewed from 33rd Avenue from the alley. This prevents the ADU from having an overwhelming the relatively modest homes that surround the site. And this is the street and alley elevations show the massing and openings consistent with the Powder Highlands Landmark District characteristics. We appreciate the 4 street-facing windows that are centered above the garage door, and we appreciate the trapezoidal glazing facing the backyard in the existing house. These windows bring in enormous natural light while limiting views to the backyard from the apartment and into the existing home, maintaining privacy in both directions. We think this is a clever solution that is relatively hidden from the public way. And some other stuff too, but they say in summary, we think this is a handsome ADU and it fits well to Landmark District. Yeah, that's all I have to say. So thank you, Jack, for your time.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I do have a few questions. So I am curious, so the bulk plane, as you said, the first kind of design you guys had that had the lower, one part of the roof lower, the eave was lower. You guys are meeting the requirements for the bulk plane, but I am curious why you guys chose not to utilize the full height of the structure. It seems like you guys are a little short of that limitation. So I'm just curious to understand what the intent was there.
Oh, you're saying why we didn't go to?
Yeah.
We really didn't need to. These are already getting to 11 foot tall here. This whole ADU is actually sunken into this part of the site. And what's really great about this site is there already has retaining walls on the north side and the west side. So it has this like perfect box that we can demo the existing garage and put a new. So we're pretty tall to begin with. But what those retaining walls did is it did fix kind of where the position left to right the ADU is. So the footprint was more or less already decided, I think, when we started. And then when we got up to the bulk plane, that's where we hit it. And so we didn't utilize the whole height. We didn't need to.
And to better understand, so the comment you made about the asymmetrical roof, peak of the roof, to better understand that, so you guys didn't submit reflected ceiling plans, or at least they weren't in our packet. So I'm curious, are you guys proposing that these, the roof or the ceiling area in the kitchen and living room are exposed and you're seeing that peak, or are there drop ceilings in any of the areas?
Yeah, everything's vaulted in this one. So.
And in the bedrooms and the bathroom as well?
The bathroom, no, but the bedrooms, yes. The closets are capped off too.
Yeah.
We actually plan to put where that closet space is here, a little mechanical room, maybe up there, because there is some added height. Since we changed the roof, we really could take advantage of a little bit of extra attic space there. And the bathroom would look really weird if it had 10 11-foot ceilings, so we capped off that at 8. But everything else, like the bedroom, living room, they're all vaulted in. should make the space feel a lot bigger, even though it is a small area.
Any other questions for that? All right, I guess that's,
I just thought it was funny, and maybe this is for Crystal too, but so I guess today we're voting if it's approved through Landmark, but getting the recommendation of Landmark when we go for an administrative adjustment makes things a lot easier. I know, because I've done this on another project and it got through in one day when we had and so getting your approval is it's really important to me. So if we have to change it, even if we get approved today, I just want to follow up with you and figure that out. And
I just wanna be clear, like, you're asking them for an administrative adjustment through the zoning code for this roof. But if they do not give it to you, there are other options. There are other administrative adjustments, or there are board of adjustment you could go to ask for a variance if you want to keep this roof. If all of those didn't work and you didn't get this, then you would likely need to change the roof form to meet the zoning code.
I guess though that brings up a question that I have for you is, would you prefer to get the administrative adjustment from us, which my understanding would, save you then the time of having to go to the BOA for a separate process, if that meant making the roof symmetrical, which we have to deliberate to even decide if that, would be something, but would you prefer that versus holding on to the asymmetrical roof and pursuing the BOA process? Is that something we can take into consideration in our deliberation?
I know my client said they wanted to try to see if it would be allowed with base mesh work. They wanted to, I told them kind of what it might cost to put the beams in, and they said, let's try for that first. But it comes down to timing too, it can take a while to get through the BOA, so I think I need to discuss it with them. I know you guys can approve with conditions, so maybe, I don't know what the best way, I'm just trying to brainstorm with you guys.
Besides sawtooth, did you consider any other roof forms?
So this is our third root form
Right,
for this project.
different angles, but
Yeah, there were a couple more in concept, but my client kind of gravitated towards the sawtooth first, and then we modified it.
I think we
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, staff, do you have any recap or clarifications that
I
you
just wanna clarify, you're voting on this design, this is what they presented, and they're asking for an administrative adjustment for that bulk plane encroachment. And just to be clear, it has to be that you're finding that they have to do that, because developing, conforming to the requirements of the zoning code would have an adverse impact on the district or the historic structure on the lot, and you have to find that to give them that administrative adjustment, just to be clear. If you don't think that, you shouldn't support the administrative adjustment, just to be clear. But you can approve the design as is, and they can pursue other options, or they can change it. In which case, it would likely have to come back, but if it's a simple roof change, it could likely be on consent, so.
All right, thank you. Okay, I think we're ready to move into deliberation. What are your thoughts, commissioners?
So I'll jump in, because I asked that question, but I guess my first thought is that, I'm hesitant about the asymmetrical roof as designed, even just approving it, regardless of the question of the administrative adjustment, because it's facing 33rd and there is the alley there, and you would see from 33rd kind of across the alley from that ADU. I think pretty clearly that condition of asymmetry. And I would agree, yeah, with the staff that that roof form does not contribute to the district. And it seems to me like it's a pretty straightforward matter to make that straightforwardly symmetrical, and be more appropriate within the district. And then, yeah, I would agree that giving it an administrative adjustment also, to my mind, doesn't make sense, because that roof form isn't necessary to make the ADU comply with the district. So,
I have a little bit different take, I guess. I guess to conform to the bulk plane, you would have to make that roof more slanted, I guess, or higher pitch. So I guess I kind of think the opposite way, right? If you kind of move that up, so the administrative would make more sense to make it more conforming to the historic district, even though it's asymmetrical. And I don't know that there would be any kind of pedestrian or vehicular viewpoint where you would really notice whether it was asymmetrical or symmetrical, just because of how tight it is to, you know, the house on the lot and the alley, and even the street, you are always at an angle, so you wouldn't really ever see it directly on the weather. So I don't necessarily have an issue with it being asymmetrical and administratively approving it encroaching on the full.
Chris, I think that's a good point of looking at where this roof line is really facing, and to your point, from 33rd, you don't actually see much of the peak of the roof and the configuration of it being asymmetrical. You're really just seeing the roof surface on that side. And I also was thinking about Erica's point too of if you look at the location of this property, across the street is a very modern apartment building, and while I know that's not in the historic district, I do think that it's worth noting that it is across the street from a building that is using angular planes and this kind of undulation. It's slight, but it's not abutted to a historic district where we're really seeing a lot more of these peaked roofs. There is a little bit of nuance happening across from it in its adjacent proximity.
I guess I just had concerns though that we're not really given any sense of how this proposed roof line interacts with the roof lines of the neighboring houses across the alley. You know, what the kind of shadow images that are in the application, I know don't actually correspond to what's there. Obviously, there's a lot of vegetation in the Google Street View, so that doesn't help with all of this, but that it's also different being set on an alley at that corner because there may be more space in seeing this side of the roof than there would be if it was, you know, directly like a parcel next door to these other parcels. So that's kind of my concern, is I don't have actually a good sense of how this fits into the rest of the historic district that's immediately next to it. And therefore, you know, I guess I'll also say that this strikes me as a pretty suburban design because of the side gable and, you know, the garage door on the side gable side, which I know that's also, you know, corresponding to the placement on the parcel and the existing garage and its doors. So while that's not ideal to me, I think having other conditions that aren't required or are easier to address, like asymmetrical versus symmetrical roof, I have concerns about adding on to what may not be compatible already in the sense of kind of the suburban form. So that's my take on it. So I think I'm kind of siding with Larry on this, and that at least for now, if, you know, the applicant wants to make presentation that shows us how it fits in with the adjacent properties and how that, you know, the asymmetrical roof doesn't have an impact on that. You know, I'd be willing to see that, obviously, but I'm not seeing that in this application, and therefore I'm concerned about approving it. Emily, did you have any thoughts?
Yes, I absolutely understand the functional benefits for the individual site and but I also understand that the way the adjustment is written, it doesn't allow for much nuance because this isn't as we've said, you know, amplifying the existing conditions. It's at best, we're trying to neutralize the impact on the existing conditions by like the sight lines and like not being able to see the roof form very much. So I guess that's where I'm falling with empathy for the design challenges therein.
Maybe we'll bring up the aerial photo. It's like the-
So this would be the existing aerial.
Yeah, I was just, because I was looking at the adjacent house. Just so we can like understand like the surrounding, yeah, the kind of hit through.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I was looking at that aerial photo to try and see if I could have a better sense, but because it's the current, you know, 1-story garage that we're seeing, we don't have a sense of how it's actually, and I'm not sure how the asymmetrical roof line, you know, corresponds to what we're seeing with that garage.
Can I introduce just like a friendly question that might be completely naive, and I apologize if so, but you know, the ADU down just has a rotated gable. Would that have any benefit? Again, I know very naive probably, because it would impact a lot of the design work, but would that work within the bulk plane? Trying to,
Well, I guess
Turn 90 degrees.
again,
to,
I have not
So does the
investigated this
gate-
as
the
a
gable
design
is-
solution.
The gable is facing 33rd Avenue.
And again, I know we're not designing for you, but that's why I was asking about different roof forms and what has been considered.
to that end, I think, you know, part of what our capacity to provide an administrative adjustment opens up for applicants is that the bulk plane and the height requirements, if it doesn't make sense within the context for historic purposes to comply with those, then that opens up essentially kind of any roof configuration that would make more sense in the context. And so I think that's where the you know, the argument around, I totally agree with you, Chris, that what they did to shift the wall or you know, shift the edge of that roof on the, I'm trying to orient myself, I guess the north side up. Yes, that improved things, but then I think still the overall roof form, I can't see a good argument that that is a way of, you know, of working with the historic context to the degree that would justify an administrative adjustment, when there are many other ways that they can make that happen that would better work with the
Yeah,
historic
I think they're gonna
context.
hit the, if they do the symmetrical, they'll probably hit the bulk plane regardless, right? So I'm sure they're gonna have administrative whatever at some point. If they go with so if we recommend a or symmetrical roof configuration.
But a wider consideration of options might impact instead of trying to force that engineering in. Again, friendly comment. Because then, you know, if it was a more traditional roof line, then the administrative adjustment would be more straightforward.
Well, I guess in the interest of kind of making sure we're moving forward, it sounds to me like it's possible that maybe what we're actually getting at is a denial at this point and asking the applicant to reconsider the roof entirely and see how that might better fit with design guidelines. However, if someone has a different motion that they'd like to make, we can certainly do that.
I would have. I probably would have been pretty close to approving with the administrative. So I don't know if that really makes any difference if we go and it doesn't pass, or we go denial and vote that way. I don't know what difference that would make one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the issue is that we're at quorum.
Yeah.
And if we don't have a motion that can be approved by all of us, then we're still kind of at a, basically they have to come back either with this application or with a different one.
It doesn't really matter either way then.
Yeah, I guess not. But I think we might need to do both motions.
I mean, it depends on,
And if we don't have a quorum, if we don't have a vote. What's the quorum?
Are there two
And
issues,
also-
like, does it,
like, I would strongly urge you, if you're recommending administrative adjustment, that you are doing so because that the zoning code requirements would have an adverse impact upon the historic character of the structure designated for preservation or the district for preservation.
Right.
Yeah, and that's where I go back to my original argument about to meet that without the administrative approval, the roof would be more cockeyed, for lack of a better
But
word, than.
that's based on the kind of original where they started with the sawtooth and then they kind of, I mean, they could start
But I don't
completely
think
over
that
again.
they could get to where you guys are wanting to get with a more symmetrical roof and not still encroach upon that or ask for that administrative.
But is this design compatible also, like that?
yeah, I would be a lot more
Put the
likely
cart
to,
before the horse, and the horse before the cart, or something here that you can't.
but it,
Either way, you're gonna have to do it, I think.
but we're not saying we don't want to change, like, to approve a change in the bulk plan. It's for one that might not, depending on everybody's opinion, meet that criterions to begin with.
Mhm.
So it's like, are we fighting to approve something that doesn't meet the guidelines or not? That's, I think, the nuance that I'm, or
Yeah.
the undertone that
I
I'm
think
trying to get
that's-
to.
I think that's the best way to summarize it. Okay, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll go ahead. I move to deny application number 2025-COA-602 for the new ADU/garage at 2949 West 33rd Avenue as per design guidelines. I guess our denial would be design guideline 4.19. Character defining features for Otter Highlands Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Larry.
And I'll second.
Emily seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? Okay, so the motion passes. So this is denied at this time, and hopefully we'll see back with another design.
Am I allowed to come back with two different designs? I liked the idea.
No, I think we need to have something that's clearly what we're discuss later. All
Thank
right,
you for your input and all your.
okay, thank you. All right, we now have violation section of our agenda that we have one project. This is application 2025-COA-824 at 1575 North Gaylord Street. So these are items for which a notice of violation has been issued by zoning and neighborhood inspection services. So now that I've introduced this project, we'll hear from staff and then we'll be able to ask questions. Go ahead.
Amy Amadon, representing Landmark staff. And we have Michelle Campbell, the applicant, person here with us today. This is a violation project at 1575 North Gaylord Street in the Wyman Historic District. The house you see on the screen was built in 1910. And next slide, please. Sorry.
I have InDesign open and it wants to be slow today.
This is an image of the property in 2019, a Google Earth image. Next slide, please. And here's the site plan that was provided by the current property owner, Michelle. So in 2022, the landmark inspector had a reason to come to the site based on a complaint that there was some work occurring at the rear of the property. I believe some fencing under construction. My understanding at that time, 2022, Michelle was a new owner of the property. So as I mentioned, this house was built in 1910. Decades ago, it was converted to a multifamily property. And the landmark inspector found some fence construction underway, a notice of violation was issued, staff issued a certificate of appropriateness and a permit was pulled and Michelle legalized that fence construction. So everything was settled in 2022. At the time, from what I can see, the landmark inspector also thought perhaps there was a window violation, but nothing was resolved at that time. In 2024, the landmark inspector returned to the site, some landmark staff returned to the site to follow up on the window concern, and then observed more work had happened at the front of the site. I think it had already been in place in 2022. Michelle has indicated she did not perform that work. It just wasn't observed by staff at that previous visit. So a larger notice of violation was issued in 2024 for windows and site work. We have set aside the matter of the windows violation for now because we're going to talk to you in a moment about, as you know, a revision to the windows guidelines. And we have a number of violations where we've just said, let's not deal with this right now. We don't even know what the rules are going to be. So we're only here to talk to you about site work. As I said, this is a site plan that Michelle has provided. We have been talking for a year together. We started by trying to determine if there were any other agencies that had concerns before we came to talk to you. So there's some work that occurred in the right of way. So we've talked to Dottie, some curb work and some fencing actually encroaches into the right of way. Dottie has said they don't have any problem with any encroachment, so that's good. This has also been through a zoning only review. It is a commercial property. It's in a commercial use, so although no permit has been issued, zoning and SUDP have said they don't have any worries. So it's really just down to design review. So as you see in this site plan, I'll refer to this again in a moment, but I do want to call to your attention that there's quite a bit of hardscape here, that indication of concrete and a little bit of softscape in the front with some flower beds and grass. Next slide, please. So I know this is a bit of a fuzzy image, it's just a screenshot out of Michelle's application packet, but what I want you to see here, she's got some dimension lines indicated. It looks like the fence in the front of the property is about 48 inches, which is allowed. But it quickly at the side jumps to something taller. And the design guidelines call for fencing to stay at that 48-inch height until you get to the front facade of the building, and then it can jump to 6 feet. So there's a concern with the guidelines that the height increase is too quick there, and you would have to find that that was acceptable in order to allow that fencing to stay. So that's just one thing I want to call to your attention as a potential conflict with the guidelines. You'll also see in this picture, and you'll see it more clearly in another image, I guess go to the next slide, that there's an arbor in the front that is definitely over the height allowance for fencing in the front yard. Another thing to look at here is the amount of hardscape that has occurred in front of the property. Sorry, I need to open a note here. myself out of my computer. Okay, so the two aspects of the guidelines that we're finding in particular are not met have to do with the walkway and hardscape and the fencing. So initially I showed you a picture of the property in 2019. At that time, the walkway leading to the house was flush with the lawn. There were a couple of steps that led you over the little grade rise in the front, and then a sidewalk that led to the porch, and then you rose up on a grand staircase to the entry to the house. That has now changed. There has been some amount of regrading in the front. You can see in this picture that there's kind of a lip on the side of the sidewalk. It's sitting up above the ground around it. The porch steps have to some extent been reconstructed. We're not really sure if they've been changed. It doesn't look like the number of risers have changed, but I'm not sure if anything about those dimensions are different. But just in general, the character of the approach to the building is different. There is this curve in the front and again, a lot of hardscape. Next slide, please. Again, this tall arbor in the front. And then probably the largest concern in terms of character, the fence itself is rebar attached to squared steel. And that is not in conformance with the guidelines, which talk a lot about fencing needed to be traditional materials and character with the surrounding historic district, and then the height concern. So staff finds that the design guidelines are not met to legalize what's occurred on the property. We don't have an objection to fencing being in place here. Certainly typical of the neighborhood. Maybe some additional hardscape in the front, you know, this is a multifamily use, some outdoor seating and things like that might be entirely appropriate here. But it's continuous with that front sidewalk, so it's all kind of attached to each other, and that again isn't particularly characteristic of the area, not in keeping with what was there previous to this work. So we are recommending denial of this application.
Thank you, Amy. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff? Okay, I think we're ready to hear from the applicant.
Sorry, I do have one. Were there any, I know this has been a prolonged discussion, were there any suggestions or like dialogue about potential changes that would increase the compliance? I know that that's just a general question, but.
No, I think I'll let Michelle speak to that. My understanding is at this point, the request is to legalize what's there. We really haven't gone down the path of what would be a compromise, what could be adjusted. That's my understanding for now.
If you would please join us, and you can begin with your name and address, please, and you'll have up to 10 minutes.
Hi, I'm Michelle Campbell.
Sorry, we're not quite ready to start sorry, we'll let you know.
I'm gonna start your time and just let me know when you want me to change your slides.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so I'm Michelle Campbell. I live at 5151 Aspen Drive in Littleton. And I did buy this building in 2022, I think. And yes, that's correct. I was doing some work in the back. I naively, I did not even understand it was in the historic district, so that's where that first claim came out of. All the work we're discussing today, I can't speak to the why of because I didn't perform any of that work. I didn't put up the fence. I didn't change the hardscape in the front. I haven't done any of that. I will say that I bought this commercial building. It was in very bad shape, had a high rate of crime. And I bought it because I really loved it and I wanted it to kind of be there. And I have a great set of tenants now who really love living in that building. So anyway, just so you know, I have an appreciation of the historic nature of this building. That said, I'll address that hardscape first before I go into this presentation. That big set of hardscape in the front, I know we could go back to some of those other pictures, but that is used as a sidewalk area to get back to the rentals that you enter. If you look at the south side of the building, yeah, kind of there, you can see it a little bit. As you go past that bench there, you have to go downstairs to get to the garden level units that are down there. And so a portion of that front hardscape really has to be sidewalk to be safe to walk through for the tenants. So that you can shovel and keep it clean and everything like that. So I think there's a portion in front of that where that little patio table was. I mean, something could be done there, I guess. I do not think it could be grass. I don't know how you would keep that grass alive. We don't have any sprinkler system or anything at the neighborhood. The beautiful grass that you see on the northeast corner is actually turf that I put in because the tenants' dogs had completely killed that grass. So I put in a really high quality turf to keep it green and beautiful and have a place for the dogs to go. But I mean, I can't keep grass alive there. So if you wanna talk about other options for that hardscape to make it prettier, I'm open to things, but I don't think grass will make sense. As far as the fence goes, if we go to the presentation I put in, I mean, when I had my first discussions with Amy a year ago, she did mention, you know, the cheapest option is you can take down the fence because you don't need a fence. And I really think looking at this first slide, this building is 1 block north of Colfax and it's 1 block west of York. It's not in a great area. There's a synagogue across the street that has a food kitchen every Wednesday. We have homeless encampments regularly in the area. When I first bought the property, the fence was there with the doors, but it didn't have locks on them. People regularly broke into the apartments. We had people sleeping in the back laundry room. We would have to call the police. So I put coded locks on the doors so that, you know, that would no longer happen. I put up Ring cameras for the tenants so that they would feel safer. The building to the south, I think you saw, is just a large parking lot, and then that's another commercial building. I don't know what they do there, but it's not an attractive view right to the south. So the gable, I'm happy to remove the gable. I don't have any attachment to that gable. But lowering the door to 48 inches in the front would take away all of that security for the tenants. And so, and I did ask them last week, I told them this meeting was happening, and you have if you wanna go to the next slide, these are words from my tenants about how much they love the security that is provided by that fence. So we'd really like to keep the fence. I mean, I don't know anything about rebar or whatever. I think she painted it to look like a black iron fence. I understand rebar is not a material you approve. I don't know financially how expensive it would be for me to completely recreate that fence. I mean, I'm trying to have apartments here that people can afford and keep expenses down. So that to me is an expense thing, not a look thing. And I know you're looking at it from a different way, but I mean, I think that that's a large financial problem to replace the clutch fencing. So that is my request with the fence. There was a discussion about the window that someone came in to look at the window. I did have an interior inspector come in 2022 because we were doing a lot of interior work. And he told me that since the windows were there, as long as I didn't replace them and I just repaired them, that everything was approved. And I thought that that was why nothing else went forward in 2022.
I actually don't know.
Yeah, just so you're saying,
anything about
like you said, they went and checked back on the window,
So
but that's what I was told.
just, you know, your time is limited and we're not considering the windows at all today, so I just wanna make sure that you're using your time to the best of your ability for what we're considering, which is the site work.
And on the south side where the fence is a little tall in the front, that's because the neighbor's property goes like this and the fence is built on theirs. So I think she was trying to back one side. Yeah, it gets to be 4 feet like further on. I think she was trying to just layer it up. I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion about that either. Except that there are a lot of big trucks that park on the other side of that fence. You can see in one of the pictures that I provided, there's a bunch of big trucks parked there. And I think that's why, if you go through the slide, there's a current day picture of the south side of the house.
I don't have that in the PowerPoint, but the commission has your applicant.
Yeah, it's in the commissioner, it's in the PowerPoint that Amy showed.
That's all I have.
But that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I just want one clarification. So when you bought the property, the fence was already up?
Yes. In its entirety, except for in the backyard was where I did work on the fence. And I did put in a second door that matches the doors in the front, and that was approved by Landmark at the time. And it does have the same construction with the black iron and the bar and the metal.
So you added some additional fence in the back?
Yes, to keep it, to contain the entire yard.
Okay.
For safety and to allow another entrance in the back for people coming from the north side.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
It might actually be for staff, but I think that is an important point. So Landmark did approve that work in the back with that construction material?
No, it's a different fence material in the back.
No, there's a wooden fence, but the door is the same construction material as the one in the front with the rebar
It's-
and the black iron and the metal grating. It was built by the same person. So I used the person who had worked for the
there's-
previous owner.
The 2022 approval, I think, legalized internal to the property, like a steel gate, and there may be some piece of the rebar fence. And then some different kind of railing that's kind of exterior to the property. I wasn't the staff person, but it may include some aspect of that.
Just trying to,
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you very much. Yes, if you. Amy, any clarifications? Oh, Brittany is pulling up the approval for the rear fence. So we'll wait for that for a second.
Don't think that 2022 approval is pertinent really to this discussion, but
Yes. Okay, so while we're waiting for that, commissioners, what are your thoughts on this?
It is a challenge that, as the presented testimony said, that this fence configuration was inherited, as obviously it does not meet the historic guidelines. But it does seem that there are a significant number of violations in the fence. I think the materiality, obviously, the height really seems to be one of conflict. Especially, I understand the neighborhood context and being close to Colfax and the kind of neighborhood activity that's happening there. But given the restricted heights of fences for this historic neighborhood, I think that's it's kind of a tough thing to take into consideration. Given that obviously higher the fence, the more perceived protection, but that just doesn't meet the guidelines.
Yeah, it's never easy to deal with inherited problems, at least from the perspective of the commission. But it seems like, given that what we have before us is just an option to either approve what's there or to deny that and reopen the discussion about what could be a compromise of maybe some aspects being retained or changed. It seems like, yeah, that seems like the better course of action is to deny the per the staff's recommendation, so that we can then hopefully, see a different application that maybe takes into some considerations of the owner's concerns about security, but also strikes a a better balance with meeting the design guidelines.
One of the areas that seems like it would be challenging for a fence regardless of compliant or non-compliant is that side access point that that meets the neighboring parking lot. Because that is raised, it seems that there will be a height conflict there no matter what, so I'm curious to hear the commission's thoughts on that item and then any others.
I mean, I guess I would say that that seems like a subject that is ripe for, kind of revisiting and compromise and hearing what maybe should be allowed there or not, but when we're looking at the kind of the whole package, yes. What we've got is the option to approve what's there now or ask for it to come back.
Yeah, I think a lot of that stuff will also shake out with some proper review of what even zoning allows, because there are a bunch of, and a lot of that overlaps with our guidelines, but I agree with both of your takes on this. Yeah, just the number of aspects of the fence work that are in violation, and then just the extent of the site work. Which really the main, thing seems to be the big concrete patio right up to the fence.
Emily?
Oh, I was just kind of agreeing with that. It seems like, as far as the paving, in addition to the amount, it's that continuity. So a planting strip there might be, I mean, again, I'm not trying to design anybody's, but as far as a potential compromise on that, which would then reduce, of course, the scale of it. And I hope that there can, because, when you didn't do the work, that is so tricky but it is in violation. So I'm hoping that there can be a compromise between removal and, rebuilding. But I don't think that this is the solution.
Yeah, I have a really difficult time holding somebody else responsible for somebody else's fault. I think that that's not really very fair. I don't think anybody would want to have that held against them. If they bought a property unbeknownst to them that something was in violation, and they're gonna have to spend, tens of thousands of dollars to get it fixed, no matter what the compromise may be. So I think I have a really difficult time holding the current homeowner responsible for somebody else's violation.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, Chris, but I guess I wonder if that's our take, that's not following the design guidelines first and foremost, but secondly, it seems like a way to just let all kinds of changes happen because of one owner doing it, and then gets bought by someone else. And so if our perspective is to really preserve the character of historic districts, I think that's what, even though it's may strike us as unfair or heavily burdensome to a property owner, what we're really looking at is the historic character of historic districts and how that work.
Within reason, right? It's always gonna be within some kind of reason. And
Unfortunately, violations are inherited by new owners. When that does happen, we do try to work with those new owners to not enforce fines, because we do understand that sometimes they're just not aware of these violations, but also we do have to work within reasonable limits. Like if we're just not getting, I don't know the history beyond this, I'm just speaking in generalities, like if we're not getting traction with the new owners to resolve those violations, we will also start enforcing those fines. So, we do try to do our best and make accommodations, but we do also have to uphold our design guidelines and make sure we are preserving the character of the historic district and not unfairly, treating one property a different way from another property. So it is unfortunate, and it does happen sometimes that homeowners do inherit these violations that previous homeowners did commit and that they aren't aware of them. And it's really unfortunate situation, and our heart does go out to those homeowners, but we really do try to stay impartial in those situations and really stick to our guidelines in those situations.
Yeah, I mean, the fence obviously doesn't meet the guidelines, right? And so where is the compromise?
As far as the amount of hardscape in the front, that's, I'm sorry, for the fence, right?
Yeah, for the fence.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
I mean, it doesn't seem like there's gonna be much of a compromise. It's gonna be like, hey, this doesn't meet the design guidelines, so therefore,
But if what we have in front of us is the hardscape and the fence, and we're being asked to consider all of that.
I know, but I know, but we can't just look at everything in a box, right? Like, we have to look at, context, right?
But I guess what I'm saying is that there's an opportunity for the fence to come back and maybe be as is, or have like some slight changes that better fit the design guidelines. But is incorporates some other changes like reduction of hardscape or whatever that is, that then we're looking at all of that again together. Because we're not in a position to approve one thing and not the other, I think, based on how these are integrated with the fence and the hardscape. So I think there's an opportunity to maybe because of the way the grade changes with the neighboring parking lot, of having fencing that is higher than maybe we would normally see it. But again, we're looking at hardscape and fencing, and there hasn't been any other discussion about options among all of those.
To Emily's point, it does seem that the hardscape, probably the better solution is going to be to pull some of that back and cut some of it out and keep the concrete sidewalk. And give back some of that hardscape to turf or greenery or what have you, but turning it back into a plant bed of sorts.
Yeah, just to create that, this, at least a nod to the historical context of it being greenery on the sides, like a planting strip would work. And as far as compromise, I don't know if it's our position to be suggesting compromises, so that's a difficult thing, because it's like, I have ideas, but
I don't have any ideas. I'm just saying that we all know, we can all sit here for a fact and say that doesn't meet the design guidelines, right? Just the style of the fence, right? And so if it's gonna come back around, then they're gonna be like, oh, we took some hardscaping out and we lowered it a little section over here, and everybody's gonna sit here and be like, it doesn't follow the guidelines. Well,
So to that note, I do have a question for Brittany or Landmark staff. So in talking about the fencing material, the rebar is very evidently does not fit with the historic context and the guidelines, but the steel tubing is a very typical material seen in fencing today in general, even if you are doing a more decorative fence. So I think in keeping, I guess in addressing some sort of compromise, or just weighing elements that go into the design guidelines, kind of understanding what could potentially be reused, I guess.
Yeah, I'm gonna defer to Amy.
Yeah.
I don't think that we want to go too far down the path of redesigning, but it seems to me that you could saw the rebar off the face of those rails and put something else on there. I don't think that the entire structure has to be torn down, and I would certainly hope we could find some way to salvage it.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me a bit of, there was a Colfax A project where there were also some fencing elements that didn't meet guidelines, and the owner was able to, as I recall, modify some of those fencing elements to a place that we felt was a reasonable compromise, where I think there were like some overheight lamp posts or something, but the rest of the fencing met the guidelines. So I think to your point, Chris, there are some
that's great. I mean, that's
that'll get, I think, worked out in the conversation between the applicant and their landmark staff person
Right, I'm glad to hear Amy say that there's maybe a solution. So that's all I, really wanted to hear. I just didn't want to stick the homeowner with, hey, this doesn't follow the guidelines, you're gonna have to either completely redo it or tear it down. And, there's gotta be some kind of middle ground, I think.
I mean, I do think staff does work with homeowners. I think the homeowner here in this instance wanted to see if this as installed could be approved by the commission.
This could become a staff level approval if we could find something that was at the guidelines, and we all agreed on it.
All right, would someone like to make a motion?
I can make a motion. I move to deny application number 2025 COA 824 for the site work at 1575 North Gaylord Street as per design guidelines 2.38, 5.1, 5.2, 5.5, 5.6, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Bree. Do we have a second? Thank you, Emily. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? All right, the motion passes, and so this application is denied, and hopefully we'll see the application. Thank you. All right, now we have just our discussion agenda item. Okay, so this is a follow-up to our previous discussion about new design guidelines for windows and doors on historic structures. So I think Amy
Yeah,
is.
I'm gonna take the lead on running through the slides with support from Brittany. So we, on September 2nd, came to you all and introduced a very draft level, well, maybe it wasn't so draft. We showed you where we were on a long process of an update to the windows section of the design guidelines. We're talking about windows in a historic structure, not new construction, not additions, windows in a historic structure. And we described to you how we had taken public input and held meetings and drafted and redrafted and kind of how we'd gotten to the point of new concepts and presented that to you and got some initial feedback. And at that meeting, we felt like there were two large issues that you wanted some response from us. So that's what we're here to talk about. So two topics. The first one, are the proposed guidelines more restrictive than the existing guidelines? And I'm going to apologize right now. These aren't fun slides with pictures. It's a bunch of text. Sorry. Oh, there's a picture here. So in terms of whether this is more restrictive than what exists now, I want to say right off the bat, no, because we are getting rid of a process we have right now where we require people to do an exhaustive assessment of every single window that they are considering replacing. And they have to demonstrate that that window is irreparable before they can request approval to replace it. So this little picture here is one page of a 130-page study that we received for a home that wanted to replace windows, where they took pictures and they studied and poked and prodded at every window in the home to show whether or not they could be repaired. And that is what's currently required. We're not going to do that anymore. We are now going to describe every window as a character window, meaning it really has high quality. It really is something we treasure, and we are going to say, we're going to have a long talk before that can be replaced. And we're going to identify other windows as common windows that can be replicated today, and we're going to have a less intense process to allow those to be replaced. So right off the bat, are we being more restrictive in the new guidelines? I think no. Moving on to more of a design discussion. What about whether people can add new fenestration or infill or alter fenestration on a historic structure? So right now, I would say we don't really have very good guidelines for this. There's only one guideline that talks about this in terms of windows and one that talks about this in terms of doors. So I think designers probably feel it's pretty murky whether they can do this or not on the historic part of the structure. So to improve that situation, the first thing we are doing is, sorry, I'm not even telling you when to advance the slide. Thank
It's
you for
okay.
being psychic. We are improving our definitions about visibility and public vantage points. Right now, we talk about caring the most about things that are on, what's the term we use, Brittany? Primary facades. And that is the street facing facade, which is pretty obvious what that means. Now we're gonna talk about public vantage points, which is defined here, and it means, you know, something broader. If someone's standing in front of a building, that might mean you're getting some views down the side. So it is expanding the area that you're going to be more restrictive about. So that means, you know, in your question of are we getting more strict? Yes, because you're gonna maybe be putting your foot down a little bit more about a broader view of the front of the building. You're also being more clear about what you care about. So as I go on to the next few guidelines, just keep in mind that we are adding some better definitions to where the hard line is for various policies.
To like this wasn't in the glossary before, and these terms were interchangeable in the guidelines before, so we've given them a clear definition and also aligned them with the zoning code definition of what like 5'6" height. So that's what is considered like, if you're 5'6" and you are standing at a certain point and can see something, that will be public visibility. So it like has to be a street, sidewalk, public park. You can't be like on private property, you can't be in the alley, because you all often ask about that, particularly the alley. So we wanted to clarify that.
And you can't be across the street in a third floor window, you know, that we're really trying to make it more clear what the threshold is for features that need to be protected. Okay, so putting a side to side comparison for a couple of guidelines here. In terms of what fenestration can't be disturbed, you have on the left an existing guideline, maintain pattern and proportion of existing openings, and then next to it is the comparable proposed new guideline. They're the same in the sense that they both prioritize maintaining fenestration and integrity where it has the greatest public benefit. Currently, this is described on that primary facade, that street-facing facade, and in the new guideline, it's that public vantage point I just described. So the new guideline is more restrictive because I just said it's a potentially a broader area. Now we're wrapping down the side of the building. Next slide, please. However, in the current guidelines, it gets murky what happens in the sides and the rear of the building. It kind of waffles about whether you can or can't change openings on the side and the rear. In the new guidelines, I think it's clearer because it talks about character windows on the sides and rear. You probably can't alter because those windows are going to be protected on all facades. Common windows, you probably are going to be able to alter. And we talk more specifically about you can lower a sill, you can make it wider. You need to keep some perspective. You can't change every opening on every facade. There's some threshold about the majority and there are some boundaries, but right now we don't say anything. We make it like, well, you know, maybe why don't you spend $10,000 designing for your client and we'll let you know. So I think we are doing a better job of setting some boundaries without making it so firm that there's no flexibility. Next slide, please. Right now, the guidelines don't say anything about whether you can add a new window to a historic structure, which is kind of crazy. That's a gaping hole, I think, in what direction we're giving to applicants and to ourselves. And it only has one sentence about whether you can add a door to a historic structure. So we have a new proposed guideline that at least says something about that. Which it says you can do those things if it can't be seen from a public vantage point. Next slide, please. So that's kind of what we have to say at the moment to you about whether we're being more restrictive on windows in historic structures. Do you have any questions about that so far? Okay. And then the other topic, which I think we weren't really expecting you to be concerned with, but it definitely came up in the September 2nd meeting. I'm just gonna be a little brief about it. I think Nick was particularly the advocate, he's not here. And Chris, you had some interest in it. And the question was, why aren't we adding vinyl as an allowable window material for a historic structure? So next slide, please. And again, sorry, there's no pictures. This is not a policy change. We've never allowed this in historic structures, in additions to historic structures in historic districts. In this guideline update, we are recognizing that window technology has changed. We are adding fiberglass and composite to the window types that can be inserted in these buildings. We haven't in the past. That's been allowed in additions and infill. We're adding it in historic structures. Next slide, please. Some of the reasons we are not adding vinyl for any instance in the kinds of properties you regulate are, you know, the vinyl windows, I think, are something that are readily available, kind of off the shelf, and there's, in our perception, a wide variety of quality that maybe isn't so true of other window types. They are something you can go into a big box store and get, you know, potentially a much lower quality version of that is more subject to these characteristics I've bullet pointed here than is necessarily true of some of the other window types. And we are concerned about opening the door to that. Less so concerned about that being true of fiberglass, composite, wood, aluminum clad. I don't believe that vinyl is an allowed material in most any other historic district, historic commission around the country, and we don't want to be the ones to be the test case for that, so we are not inclined to add that. Do you have any questions about that? Okay, last slide, please. So our next step is that we are bringing you a big package on January 6th. Hopefully we don't have a lot of cases that day. This is going to be a cleanup of chapter 1, which is the introduction chapter to the guidelines. The new guidelines for windows and doors, which is partly what I was just discussing, and a reformat for the whole guidelines chapter, which Brittany's going to show you, I think, a sample in a moment. Just to sort of modernize the graphics, just make it more reader friendly. Beautify the guidelines so that we are proud of them and they're easier to read, easier to navigate. That's our intention. We were thinking of doing this in December, but we want to give ourselves a little bit more breathing room. We're thinking possibly of coming back to you in the interim, maybe not, with any other topics you want to talk about, because we really love an adoption in January. But however it goes, it's your decision and we're not going to pressure you to do anything. So if you have any questions, Brittany, do you want to show those pages?
I was gonna print these out, but InDesign conspired against me and decided to delete these pages, so that was cool.
Oh God.
And by cool, I mean, I cried a little bit.
Yeah.
So I recreated them this morning.
Yeah, we have lost some software access lately and just a few traumas.
So I know we
Thanks,
haven't
Brittany.
talked a lot about what the new design will look like, but this is a sample of chapter 2. So the new document will have new colors, as you can see here. It is blue. And the chapter 2 is still the historic building chapter. And each section will be like 2.1, so intro chapter, the intro will be 2.1. And it will have a new numbering system as a way of wayfinding. And so the Windows section will all be 2.4. So all the guidelines for the Windows sections will be 2.4 guidelines. So the treatment for windows and doors will be 2.4, and then you'll have the intent statements here at the very top, as opposed to the side as they were previously. So they won't get as lost as they were before. And then guidelines for openings will be there at the very beginning. So those are that section that Amy was talking about before, where we only had one guideline before about openings, and we have just a few more now. So that is 3 more guidelines there, just to provide some clarity about introducing new openings on historic buildings and providing some clarity there. And then guidelines for character windows that we will, is a new concept that we will be introducing to preserve those more significant character windows that we've been talking about this entire time. And then some more flexibility to replace these more common windows, which are like simple 1/1 windows, and eliminating that need for that assessment and allowing it to be easier to replace those common windows that we have. Putting egress windows at the end of this section, because currently if you look through our guidelines, the egress window section just kind of falls right in the middle for some reason and interrupts the guidelines for window replacement. So they'll just come right at the end, and then 2 guidelines there just to provide some general guidance. And then I've mentioned a few times about some blue pages that we have been working on. So this is one of our current guideline pages that we have that has been converted into a blue page, but we'll have a blue page for what like a character window is versus the common windows. So I'll provide additional guidance to users of this document. So again, I was planning on printing this out so you'd have it to look at and compare with our current guidelines, but InDesign wasn't playing nice with me due to, I think, our license issues and stuff like that. But again, all the Windows guidelines will be 2.4. So if you're ever looking for Windows and doors guidelines, all you have to do is flip to the 2.4 section. You'll find everything you need in that section. There'll be blue pages in this section that we can just like pull out and hand out to people. So like instead of this historic windows considerations, we're just going to get rid of this page and turn it into like a blue page for what a common and character window are, do some information about storm windows and why you want to preserve your windows, and educational information and things like that. Anyway, so that is really what the layout is looking like. And I know we haven't spent a lot of time talking about it, but that is what Andrew and I will be doing over the next month. And this is just, you know, in general what the document is looking like. And that is just why we are doing this in January. So we can do this layout for you guys.
I like the idea of the tear out sheets. Yeah, I mean, symbolically or otherwise. Yeah. Are you still doing any call out boxes for like additional information within the document?
Yeah, there's still call out boxes. Like here's one right here. This one is seek professional assistance for severe deterioration. So I guess that's an existing one that we have. Just trying to see what's in here in general. This is a new section.
Call Emily.
Yeah. Like this one here, talking about dormer locations, that's an existing one we have in the guidelines. A lot of this is like just taking a lot of the existing guideline document and putting it in this new format that we've had since I can't read the date right now because it's on my very small screen, but we've had this document since like 2023. And we just haven't had time to convert it over, but I really want to make an effort to get this adopted, because we've had it for a while, and it is like, it is an improvement for us, because there are a lot of behind the scenes things. In addition to the visuals, like it is ADA accessible, readable in a way that our current one is not. And there, in addition to like, there are, if you look at the photographs, it's really hard to see because it's very small, but like the photographs are color coordinated. So like if it is something we're encouraging to do, they're indicated in a blue box with yes. And then if we're saying that you shouldn't do that, it's no and orange. So they're like just very subtle, like coordinated things about this document that are intended to help a lot with like subtle cues as to like, no, you shouldn't do that. So like here, this one is like, you can tell that one's orange there, so that's like a no, and etc. So I think it will be much more user friendly and like, you know, give more prominence to our intent statements than it had before, and really just be really better.
I like, and I know we're not prolonging this, sorry, but the idea of explaining, like having some of the why in the boxes, because of course you can't integrate it into the guidelines, but there is so much mystery behind that for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So thank you.
And then eventually, like, Andrew is really great at illustrations. We'd love to update some of the illustrations, pictures and things like that. And it'll be a lot easier to update this document than it was our old one, which was kind of clunky and cumbersome. And once we get this updated, it'll be easier to update it, like small pieces of it.
So for the review meeting targeted for the 6th of January, we would have this document and we'd have a week to review it, so it'd be the same as whatever's on the agenda versus, I guess, is there opportunity to get our hands on it sooner depending on the page length so we can really spend time with it?
So we have to officially publish a draft with the clerk and recorder 20 days prior to the public hearing. So if we're doing the public hearing, the first meeting in January, that is December 17th-ish. We could send it to the commission that same day, and you could start giving us kind of feedback and comments then.
Yeah,
Great, especially with the holiday.
cause I was like, a week, like, yeah, I will prioritize it, but.
As far as content, you're only really focused on chapter 1 and 2.
Right, yes,
The
yeah.
rest of it is more.
There is no,
yes, yeah.
yeah, there is really no other changes though to other chapters. It is just an import to design guidelines. I will say if there are like photographs you see in the design guidelines now that you're like, I hate this photograph. Here is a better photograph I wish you used. You can send that to me now. I would love to have that now. Andrew and I would love to have that now. But I would say like in general, Andrew and I, we would hands down, we are thinking, even we're gonna tell the landmark team that we don't want any more like edits like that. Oh gosh, what did Andrew and I say? We don't want any more edits of that nature later than December 5th is what we said. Cause that would give us a week to like put all of those in before we have to.
Ask a question, talking about the timeline, so if you said that the, this is Jen Capetto from Landmark staff, for the recording. The document has to be filed with the clerk and recorder, you said on the 17th or 18th or something like that of, And then that would mean that the commission would have a few weeks, but that's prime holiday time. Is that okay with you all? Like, do you want us to postpone it to the second January meeting? Not that I've mentioned this yet, but I'm just here thinking along the lines of my schedule as well.
Can you make any changes within that period? Like if there was any significant changes between that December 17th and January 6th, could you even incorporate that because it's been submitted?
I mean, it's still just a draft document, correct?
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's just a matter of whether what you all would be reviewing would be what goes to the clerk and recorder, and then you all have to make a motion on that. So if you all, it could be lots of conditions, it could be a denial, it could be approval. We'd love for it just to be a clean approval, ideally.
I think
But
that
it's really, the only thing that would be different is chapter 2,
Right.
windows and doors guidelines, chapter 1.
Right.
Which you have had that draft document for several months. And again, like I said, if you have comments on photos and stuff like that, I'm open to those, but we're not changing any other guidelines.
At this
I had
point,
also suggested we certainly could put the document back in your packet in November or December, you know, even just showing you our progress, even if it doesn't look pretty, just for you to say again, I read this again and I have a concern. Whatever you think, we're eager to get this done because there are so many people waiting for us to stop doing this window assessment, things like that, so.
If it were to be something where you're giving us a draft earlier, would it be like a discussion item on an agenda, or would it just be for us to?
I think
Does it
if we were
need to
gonna
be
do it, we
agenda?
should have it as a discussion item, so you could review it and you could let us know if you're seeing something, so we could react to it, but I think it would have to be, we haven't talked about this, we're talking aloud. I'm talking aloud.
Thinking aloud, yeah.
You know, the first meeting in November, or the second meeting in November, so that we would make that deadline that Brittany just mentioned.
Yeah. And like Andrew and I have some things on the agenda. We have staff meetings every Monday and Wednesday. Andrew and I have some things on the staff agenda to discuss with the rest of the staff tomorrow. So like there's things that we might wanna bring back to discuss with y'all as the commission that we discuss in the staff meeting tomorrow. Like we have time, but there's a big thing that I think we might want to bring back to discuss with the commission, but I want to discuss with the staff before I even mention
Yeah.
it to the commission.
Adam, have his hand raised.
Hi, Adam Hernandez, Assistant City Attorney. I guess just to put an overarching framework on this, the way these are adopted is through the city's rulemaking process. And that's where Brittany's talking about posting a copy of the rules with the clerk and then a minimum of or at least 20 days between that date and holding a public hearing. It could obviously be longer than that. I guess the other thing to consider is there would be a public hearing held for these rules. You may get a lot of public comments where those have to be addressed at a later meeting. So I guess timelines are a bit potentially in flux here. Like you would not be required to adopt this the date of the public hearing, depending on what you hear from the public, if you know that was relevant information. And so the public hearing would be held on one day, but then there could be subsequent discussions about what you heard of the public hearing and requests to change those design guidelines that would then ultimately come back to the commission for their ultimate approval. If that makes sense, I feel like I was rambling a bit.
Is there a notice period before adoption or just for the public meeting?
Just for the public meeting, and then a notice period after or a notice after adoption. But you could take longer from the date of the public hearing to your ultimate adoption. That does not have to be done the same day.
Give some flexibility at least.
I think generally, obviously, we don't wanna push any deadlines you guys have set. We wanna work within them, and I think that being said, the sooner we can receive the document to review it and
Yeah.
just get any comments out there, the better. And yeah, understood it's not like you guys are rewriting the entire thing, we get that.
Yeah, I guess the big thing still is I've provided the draft window guidelines previously.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's like, to me
Yeah.
personally, I'm a very visual person, and so I wanna see the text with all the visuals and like understand, like I wanna approach it as I'm a layman and this is new to me. So that's, for me at least, that's why I wanna be able to review the draft as you guys have been working on it. Cause yeah, you're right, we've reviewed the text, and we provide some comment on that. So we have already been picking away at it, at least from the commission's standpoint.
Definitely, if you already see pictures, you're like, please replace this. I'm happy to take those comments now.
Okay, so we will discuss amongst ourselves whether we could get you a version with illustrations in November, if there's any chance that you could see a preview of that to give us last comments. Otherwise, December 17th-ish, when we publish, you might get that. January 6th, we'll be here with a public hearing.
Sounds good.
I do know some of the pictures, although I think we did a good job, are not Denver. So if you see any that are not Denver, please let me know those. Although I think Jen and I did a really good job of scrubbing those.
That's good.
But let me know.
Thank you. I really appreciate the kind of summary of clarification of change, not change. That was really great. So thank you on that.
And adopting the composite and fiberglass, I think that sets aside some concern of evolving materials, so I think that's right.
All right, I think we've addressed all our agenda items. So unless there's any other comments from staff or commission, I will adjourn us at 2:49.